Hello, and welcome to our third video where we'll be talking about our academic experience here while being in DC. So, on top of our internships, we are also taking two additional classes here on the Capitol. The class we'll mostly be focusing on today is going to be actually our Wednesday class, where it's much more of a traditional policy class taught by our great professor, John Cardinal. And the two things that we want to discuss are actually the mixed economy and work and wages. So, when the United States government had a hand in our economic affairs, it actually led to a great prosperity in multiple areas of American life, from things such as science, medicine, education, to many more things. In class, we read readings from these authors called Hacker and Pierson, and they believe that effective government action in our industries are what greatly improve the quality of life for Americans in the 20th century. Now, although the conversation around government involvement has become much more negative, Hacker and Pierson argue that the reason for our decline in fields such as health and education is because of the recent lack of involvement the government has had in those industries. So, what we talked about in class is why I believe that for social programs such as Medicare for All is something that we should all support because, you see, as a nation, we spend the most on healthcare than almost any other country, and yet a significant portion of Americans are still uninsured. They can be uninsured for personal or economic reasons, but sometimes it is because of something completely out of their control. As Hacker and Pearson stated, in the absence of legal constraints, highly competitive markets will often encourage deceptive practices. In the case of privatized healthcare, people can be denied coverage simply because of pre-existing conditions, and notions like this can make it extremely difficult for these people to find affordable health care. They deserve to find coverage that will help them finance the medication that they may need to live. And under Medicare for All, the federal government can ensure that all Americans, regardless of their medical history, can afford proper health coverage. Similar to how the government involvement in public water cleaning and milk production led to great increases in longevity of American life in the 20th century, getting more involved in the healthcare industry can lead to a better quality of life and longevity for the average American today. By implementing a system where all eligible Americans pay into a healthcare system that they use the system, healthcare costs on an individual level can drop. And another quote from Hacker and Pearson is, when well-regulated, markets often work very well indeed. That is what the government realized after the implementation of the New Deal and similar programs in the early/mid 20th century. Government involvement in the mixed economy led to great things such as vaccine development, clean public drinking water, and pasteurized milk. Healthcare for all is just an extension of those sentiments, bettering the life of the American people. Because healthcare has become such an integral part of daily life, the government should ensure the effective coverage for its people. So that's something that stuck to me while we were talking about it in class, and that's why I believe is something we can build upon.
So adding on to Antonio's point about the historical significance and of the mixed economy and how it still affects us today, especially when it comes to all of these like technological advancements. So in American Amnesia, Hacker and Pierson fiercely defend the mixed economy, that America was the most robust when the government and the free market were hand in hand in the mid-20th century. And according to these authors, the collective prosperity of Americans declined with the rise of conservatism in the 1980s. And so I want to talk about the Green New Deal as a potential to bring back the mixed economy. So the Green New Deal seeks to expand and activate the government just as FDR's New Deal did. And in support of the Green New Deal, Hacker and Pierson would likely argue that democratic capitalism combined with publicly responsive state authority that is open to scientific expertise with well-regulated markets and vibrant voluntary sectors would yield remarkable gains in a mixed economy. Another argument being is that the wealthiest nations in the 20th century underwent spectacular growth in their economy and their government size. So yeah, adding on to Antonio's point about like technological advancements, during the peak of the mixed economy, especially like FDR's New Deal, during that time, um, there were many scientific breakthroughs that were fostered by the government, um, which spurred massive enrollment in higher educations and of support of individual scientists. Um, and because the government was there was a lot of government-funded research, the private sector was able to piggyback off that, and which led to many innovations. And so the 20th century, the mid 20th century, is evidence that the government can pave the road for innovative solutions, contrary to the belief that government should be spending less.
Two articles that we read about in class from Desmond and Morris, they aim to discuss the complex realities of modern poverty and the trends that led to poverty in our country today. Both articles actually open on a family living through poverty conditions. Desmond opens the story with Vanessa Sullivan and her 3 children, and the Morris article opens with the story of Allyson and her son Atlas. Now, Allyson is a single mother who just has an associate's degree from a blue-collar family background. She was living in Florida at the time, struggling to navigate its welfare system. Vanessa, on the other hand, is a high school educated mother of 3 whose main job at the time of the article is a caregiver. One of the realities we learned in class is that incomes are not up because of increased pay, but because more people in each house are putting in many more hours of work. Many Americans are in a position where if any financial emergency were to show up or appear out of nowhere, they could be arguably financially ruined. Now, 34% of stay-at-home moms actually live in poverty. Now, while wages have stagnated, costs such as rent, education, real estate, and childcare have skyrocketed. In states such as Florida, where Allyson moved, subsidized care required the parent to provide 2 consecutive pay stubs to prove that the parent was working at least 20 hours a week. So in order for Allyson to work, she needs childcare, but to get childcare, she needs work. So this type of weird situation leaves her between almost like a rock and like a hard place where she's basically stuck. And these are the complex situations that work requirements for social programs can create for many different people. Now, for 3 years, Vanessa was working homeless. She worked as a home health aide, making anywhere between $9,800 a year to $12,700 in a year. And the fact of the matter is, the jobs are out there, but they're not paying enough for a living wage. And the issue with Vanessa, where she was raising 3 teenagers, working as an aide, etc., she could only work 20 to 30 hours a week. And the Bureau of Labor states that the working poor is someone below the poverty line who has spent 6 months working or looking for employment. For people like Vanessa, who are without a higher education, promotions in any job market only goes to those with degrees, regardless if they actually deserve it. And the fact is, the only true solution for poverty is jobs that pay enough.
So on that point of jobs that pay enough, Cardinals class has really got me thinking about, instead about eliminating poverty, why don't we as a nation focus on socioeconomic mobility? And what is the government's role in economic mobility? So this graph, which is titled As Union Representations Fell, the share of income going to the top percent rose from 1917 to 2012. And so in this chart, we see that at the peak of unions, there was the least amount of income inequality among the top percent. And so as unions began to decline, starting in the 60s, we see an increase in income inequality. Which brings us to the importance of unions. So historically, unions have been the middleman between the laborers and the employers, campaigning for higher wages as well as training employees. And the issue is that employers want skilled laborers, but there's not enough training. There's not enough on-site training, vocational training, especially because there's this pressure for people to get a 4-year degree. And this is unfortunate. We talk about this skill gap, but this makes no sense. There is a supply of hungry, tired people that want to work, and there's a demand for these people to work. But we don't have a middleman. We don't have people to train these workers. We have an abundance of them. This class has really illuminated the importance of the unions.